Our part to save some money. We have renegotiated our lease with the bar at the State Bar building. We also were meeting with State Properties, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to find anything with them that suits our needs. But the reduction to rent is going to save us about $97,000 over fiscal year 2012, as well as we can start saving money as soon as we can get the lease signed and approved by our council. So that's going to be a substantial savings to our central office as well. That's not included in the obviously in the governor's recommendation, because it still hasn't happened, but it will likely happen any day that we can realize that savings. And it's the change is from about $20 a square foot reduced all the way down to $14 a square foot. So it's been a substantial reduction. We have also gone through the central office and looked if there are any people that we can use to try to handle our case overload problem throughout the state. And so we've redesignated one of our staff attorneys he's actually out in the field now and is handling conflict cases full-time as a staff attorney, so that our office is going to run a little leaner, just like everybody else needs to, if it'll help with our conflict numbers. The other part of our central program one, we have the folks at Capitol. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the Capitol Defender's Office has they're carrying about 60 to 64 cases, which is their highest number ever, and about 7 cases per attorney. We have also their expert costs in last year's budget was only set at about $280,000, but we're traditionally spending at least $100,000 more than that we're having to move from other programs. So the expert costs and travel are really higher than what we've been budgeted at. But we've created some new cost control measures within our office to hopefully at least make sure that that's the bottom line for our numbers. So we're going to work on that over the course of the next year as well. We've also begun, the statute for capital allows for billing the counties for cases, on capital cases, once they exceed the $150,000 mark. We've also begun that too, which is obviously not necessarily very popular, but it's in the statute, and it's sort of become a necessity for our agency. And we have seen some return on that. We've received about $60,000 worth of checks back from the counties for their part in some of those cases. As far as Program 2 goes for us, and also I guess one of the things that jumps out, originally the previous governor and the previous director had talked about creating a third program for our agency that was the Office of the Conflict Defender, where we would move money out of Program 1 and Program 2 that relates to conflicts. Conflicts meaning when you have more than one defendant in a case, they come to court. Obviously, you can only represent so many of those people with the public defender if they're indigent, so you have to have other people represent some of the other co-defendants, or you have to create certain ethical screens to make sure that there's no that the defense of each one of these people is not sacrificed because of the number of those people. Anyway, so there had been discussions about creating a conflict defender's office. I've met with OPB and the governor, and I think right now it's really just not a good idea to try to create a new structure in our agency. I just don't. I think for us to have maximum flexibility with with one program and 2 programs, moving that money as we need to try and help with our conflicts issue in particular. that maximum flexibility is probably a better way to focus our time and money. And the governor agreed, so did OPB, but that was after they had already made their recommendation. So I know that they did agree, and they made a recommendation at least to keep our programs as they were in the 11 budget, I guess is a better tracking document to look at. So this is going to be kind of confusing compared to what some of the things that I'm discussing, and so that would be my recommendation as well to the committee, that we would be better off in this particular budget time. I'm going to give you as many numbers as I can to try and make it as transparent as I can about what our caseload is and what the cost per case is, but I think flexibility is more what we need right now than to try to create a new program. I don't know that that's the best use of our funds right now. And so back to Program 2. In Program 2 also includes all the circuit public defenders' offices throughout the state. There are 49 circuits. 43 take part in the public defender's system. And 6 of those are opt-out counties. We pay the opt-out counties $1.7 million. The opt-out counties still receive, we still handle their capital cases, which is obviously a Strain and Gwinnett or Cobb. Those are big counties that opt out. Douglas and Belfour, Forsyth, Houston County. So those counties are opt-out counties, but we still pay their statutory pay for their statutory positions, as well as we don't pay the benefits on the statutory positions, but we pay for their statutory positions as well as their capital cases. Those are handled by the Capital Defender's Office. So the circuit offices right now are running between an 8 to 10% vacancy rate, and that's really one of the ways that we're holding down our the 3 to 4% reduction is those offices are just they're running low on personnel. They're running about 8 to 10% below what they ordinarily would be if they were staffed up. And that's obviously a strain on those offices, but we've been carrying that for about a year. And in 12, it looks like that's something else we're going to have to do to go through the 12 budget if we follow the governor's recommendation. The appeals office is really a conflict appeals office. Appeals are generally handled when there are appeals at the circuit levels. They're handled by their appeals people or just the lawyers they have in the different circuits. But when there's a conflict, and this really started with a Supreme Court decision called Garland. And in the Garland decision, what it essentially said is that if one of your claims after being convicted is ineffective assistance of counsel, then you are entitled to a new lawyer, meaning the lawyer that handled the case at trial that you're saying was ineffective cannot be your lawyer on appeal.
How many percentage-wise does that entail?
How many
of the appeals are there a conflict because of ineffective assistance claims?
Well, in 2010, which was the first budget year when we really saw the increase because of Garland. Garland became law in, I think, 09. Maybe it was 08, 09 case, but in our budget year, 2010, we moved up to about 400 cases for the conflict appeals group. And then this year, we're on track to have about 355 cases that are handled through the conflict appeals group. We only have 2 lawyers and a part-time lawyer in that group. So obviously, to try to handle 355 or 400 cases is a really difficult number. In addition to that, we're under an order from a Fulton County lawsuit where we've been sued that they've capped the number of cases that the lawyers in our conflict appeals office, the judge has ordered us to cap that at 25 cases per lawyer. So obviously, if we have 355 cases and we're capped at 25 cases for 2.5 lawyers, that's not going to get us there. So we have had to use contractors and, most importantly, cross-circuit. I don't know if you recall, but there was a creation of something called cross-circuit representation in our bill last year, and it's what essentially it would say is that, okay, if you have a conflict in one circuit with let's say that worst case scenario, you're imputing that conflict on everybody in the public defender's office in that circuit, then what you do is you take the case, you send it to a neighboring circuit, and have the neighboring circuit handle the appeal. And so it's a cross circuit. It goes from, more or less the way they're assigned is that they declare a conflict and they end up getting a conflict. It's a system that, that's about as fair as we can make it at this point. If we were trying to contract out these cases, I'd add one thing as well, that the conflict director, Jim Stokes, is here, and he came on board in the middle of 2010, and this is when a number of things changed about the way that we handle cases and accountability in our system in particular. But in 2009, the average invoice for a lawyer on an appeal to our office, it was billed by the hour. So there was no flat fee. It was just billed by the hour. The average invoice was for about $2,400 a case. As we stand now, this year, we have that down to about $1,500 a case. Now, that's just attorney's fees. Sometimes they might be maybe travel or expert costs or whatever for the because obviously people are having to go from, you go down to prisons, you meet with folks that are in prison, there's certain travel and other costs that are associated with that, but that's not built into the $1,500, but it is built into the contracts. And so now, obviously, the lawsuit I mentioned before in Fulton County has been critical of this rate, the $1,500 rate. It's a substantial savings to the state, but it is it's something that has come up over and over again in the lawsuit that the bar and Judge Baxter feels is just too low. But right now, that's the rate that we've driven the cost down to. But even if we were at a more, even if we moved to a $2,000 a case rate, and you looked at, some of the costs, there are a number of different costs that are involved in these cases. But even if you just said a 10% cost for some of these cases, you'd be looking at $1.5 million plus to try and run our program in appeals alone. As it stands now, because of the cross-circuit representation, we're handling about 90% of those cases in cross-circuit. So that number, we drive that number down to just the cost of handling the cases in our appeals office, and then some of the contractors that we have to use because of some additional conflicts as well. So there's a substantial savings to the state by using cross-circuit at the appellate level. And at the appellate level, it may not be sustainable over the long term because you have people in circuit public defenders' offices taking additional cases they ordinarily wouldn't be taking. So obviously that's going to be an issue on top of the 10% vacancy rate. But short term, it has been effective, and it has been a huge cost savings to the people of Georgia, almost $1 million worth of savings just by the numbers that we were talking about before. So we've driven down the cost per case, but we just don't have any control over the number of cases. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court and the Flournoy case seem to be driving that train right now. And I would say that when you send these cases out to the circuits, that means that the circuits are having to themselves pay for the expenses. If they're expert expenses, they're paying for travel expenses, and they're not being reimbursed. Obviously, we don't have any additional money to do that. So there is there's been my figure was about $191,000 worth of expert investigation or travel or other costs that the public defender, circuit public defenders, have had to just eat out of their own budgets. Maybe the counties have helped them, or whomever. But so that's an additional amount of money that that is a real cost out there of cross circuit that is not part of our part of the way that we're set up for cross circuit. There are states that do cross circuit, and they do cross circuit reasonably well. Missouri does cross circuit, except that Missouri is staffed for cross circuit. We are not necessarily staffed for cross circuit. We are just sending cases to people who already have cases, is essentially what we're doing at this point. All right, and then the conflicts themselves, obviously, is another issue for us. Obviously, we within our budget, the conflicts office receives about $3.7 million to handle conflicts. We have had, again, pre Mr. Stokes coming on board, in 2007 there were 12,000 conflicts, more than 12,000 conflicts that the circuits were declaring. In 2008, it was about 8,000. In 2009, it was about 7,000. In 2010, the number started coming up to 8,600, and then this year, it looks like we're going to be on a pace to have about 9,800 conflict cases. We have driven down the number of conflict cases, obviously with a number of measures within the office, but the numbers started to rise again, and most of that has to do with the state bar. The state bar came out with an opinion recently saying that conflicts, they can't be handled within the same circuit that the conflict arises out of. So that really limits us. There's some circuit public defender's offices that only have a 1% conflict rate. At this statewide, though, a number of other public defender's offices have 18% conflict rates, and we don't have a lot of control over that right now. There are some things in House Bill 238 that address some of those issues, but as it stands right now, we're on pace to have something around 9,800 conflict cases for this year. There's no reason to believe that we won't have that number next year, unless the Supreme Court, where we're currently appealing the bar opinion, if the Supreme Court makes the bar opinion the rule for the bar, then that is going to dramatically affect the way we handle conflicts. We will not be able to declare conflicts by our own standards anymore. We're going to have to rely on the standards they give us. So that's going to change a lot of our flexibility, and that could drive up the number of conflict cases to at least double, maybe to there's a potential, if you include public defenders divesting themselves of cases, we could have 22,000 conflict cases next year, up from the 9,800 we've had this year. All right. In 2009, your average cost for a conflict case, the way that it was handled on an hourly basis, was about $950 a case, which is pretty high. If you look at some of our opt-out counties, Cobb County, the cost per case in Cobb County is about $700 a case for a felony case. They have their own system that's not part of our system, although we do send them money, but they pay about $700 a case. In 2009, the cost was $950 a case. We've changed dramatically the way that we handle these cases, and now we're handling these cases mostly with a flat rate contract, and we've driven down the cost per case to about $450 a case. So that's a substantial difference between what Cobb or Gwinnett is paying for a felony case. But even at $450 a case, which is baseline, again, we're starting to receive complaints from the bar and a number of other people. Even at $450 a case, with 9,800 or 10,000 cases, however you want to round it up, well, that's obviously more than $3.7 million just to try and make our baseline for conflict cases. So at the very base, you're talking about $4.4 million within our budget to try and pay for conflict cases this year that we don't have. And so because of that, we're obviously in a pretty tight spot, and we're doing everything we can to try and make sure that everybody gets a lawyer in fiscal year 11, and then in fiscal year 12, I want to make sure that you're aware of what we'd be up against. And that doesn't include any expert or travel or other costs. That's just attorney's fees for the $4.4 million. If you estimated the expert and travel at 10% of that cost, which is about what we receive, in about 10% of the cases we receive a certain amount of requests for money, that's still another, $400 and it's almost $500,000. So you're talking about now you're getting up close to 4.4 or 4.9, million dollars just to try and get through on the system that has dramatically reduced the cost to the taxpayers. One of the things we started doing as well since I came on board is we started doing cross-circuit at the trial level. Cross-circuit at the trial level is much more difficult. That means that what you're asking then is there are only so many weeks that judges can have cases and have trials and have court. And so most judges are going to want to try and have it at the same time. And so if you have cross-circuit, that means that when a judge wants to go to court and wants to have his public defenders in front of him to move his cases, those public defenders are going to be in a neighboring circuit handling those cases, cross-circuit. So the judges have agreed in the circuits that we've started rolling the program out in. They've agreed to be patient with us, but I don't know that patience is going to last very long. So I think that cross-circuit at the appeals level has really been very helpful to the people of Georgia. Cross-circuit at the trial level is something that we are working on diligently, but I don't know that it's going to be as successful is the best thing I can say about it at this point. That leaves us with, I think the last thing that's part of our budget is something called the special project. The special project, we've had two special projects so far. Special project A was to handle the unusual accounting system that predates Mr. Stokes and myself, that would, bless you, that cases from 2005 to 2008, we would receive invoices in years later, and there was not a good tracking system for those bills. So we received about $1.6 million in that special fund to try and take care of the old bills from 05 to 08, and the director then, Director Crawford, he and Director Stokes, they got together, they sent out invoices, they were able to change that accounting structure and make it much more accountable, but there were a number of cases that we still had difficulty accounting for. If a judge would appoint someone a case, or some other way that somebody would end up being assigned a case, if it may not be in our computer system. The JCAT system is what we call our computer system that we've worked to try and set up. And obviously it's a really negative thing for our agency to not be meeting the obligations of the contracts or to pay people. There are a number of people that were complaining that we weren't paying our bills, and obviously that looks bad on the agency, looks bad on the state. So we attempted to satisfy as many of those things with Special Project A as we could. Then there was Special Project B, which was to handle the 09 and 10 cases that also were under the old system. It included what was left over from 05 and 08 and 09. Right now, we have about 100 cases that we've been able to identify that are still left over. They've been averaging about $1,100 a case under the old system of payment, even with attempting to cut those bills. So now since then, Director Crawford and Director Stokes changed the way that we handle fees and the way that we account for them. So for the future, if you're looking at what costs we would be up against, obviously we still have to pay the remainder of the cases that are out there from 05 to 09 to the beginning of 10. that's I think we estimated about $285,000 if altogether, plus the $110,000. There's also there's a trial fee that's built into some of these contracts. We don't want to go back to the old system. We substantially cut the rates in the contracts, but we don't want to go back to the old system that people refer to as greet 'em and plead 'em. If there's no incentive in a contract this low for people to investigate or to try cases for people who may or may not be guilty of the crime, then that's something we've potentially been criticized for. So there is a trial fee that's included in the contracts, and about 2.2% of our cases go to trial. So we're able to figure out exactly how much, when you look at 2.2% of 10,000 cases, how much of that money is going to be out there, including old expert fees and costs. So we will. We're going to exceed right now in the special project for 2011. There's about $450,000 left in that special project. We're going to exceed that number with the obligations of the agency. But are we going to, because as you can see in the OPB recommendation, it includes the $1.1 million in a special fund, the whole money. My reasoning for that and my way of explaining that to you, the special project is not going to need $1.1 million next year. The special project, if you include the trial fees, and for 2010 that we're still going to be out there, it's going to be about $100,000, $150,000, and you include the trial fees for 2011, it's going to be around $200,000. So you're really only talking about a special project of $455,000 is what we think that we would be looking at. Is this money that we're probably going to see every year because of the peculiar nature of attorneys turning in these requests for payment for trials and experts after the fiscal year's over? I think that it probably is something that...
Can I interrupt
Yes,
just
sir.
for a minute? We need to ask some questions or
Yes.
we aren't going to get through.
Okay.
So if I could open it up to the committee for questions, please. Chairman Bearden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's on now. It sounds like you're needing some money from places to kind of help out on some of these issues. And when you start looking through central office, in the central office you have 3 staff accountants, 2 staffs, 1 senior accountant. What's the differential between those 3 positions?
We handle in central office, we handle all of the accounts payable, accounts receivable for all of the circuits. So we contract with them to administer those costs. So we do their HR, we do all their payroll, we do their benefits within the central office for all of the circuits that contract with us. So the accounts receivable, accounts payable, each one of those accountants handles a different aspect for conflicts, for the different counties, and so that's the difference in their roles. So they all, yes, they are all accountants, but they do different things all statewide. Yes, sir.
So they're basically doing the same thing, but from handling different areas.
Yes, sir. Well, some do receivable, some do payable, some do finance. Not all of them do the same thing, but yes, sir.
And in the central office, we have 2 deputy directors at basically $100,000 plus. What are their jobs? I mean, are they doing? What's the differential between the 2 deputy directors?
Well, the deputy director you see there at the bottom, the deputy director at the top is actually the deputy director. The deputy director, that's just a shortened job description. That's actually the budget director and director of the administration for the office. I will say this, Mr. Bearden, we're currently auditing our central office, and any place that we can, like I said, I've already sent out one of the lawyers that was a staff attorney that we didn't need. We're going to go through over the course of this year, and any money we can find in central office is going to go out to make sure we get people lawyers.
And the reason why I'm asking, I appreciate you saying that, because as you know, there's no new money.
Yes,
there
sir.
hasn't been for quite some time. So
No,
if
I
we're going
understand.
to put funds from one place to another, we got to find areas that we might be able to
Yes, sir.
reduce in others to help you accomplish your goal.
And I will say this, though, excuse me for interrupting, but what I was getting at was that under they've left in the special project, because the special project is money that we really need to fund our budget for conflicts. If we take the money from special project that's in here, the additional $700,000 is the difference between the $3.7 million and the $4.4 million that I was talking about before.
And one last
So-
thing, if I
I'm
may,
sorry.
Chairman.
I'm sorry.
When, on Georgia Capital Defender, these areas I'm seeing legal officer, I'm assuming those are attorneys that will go out and handle the cases.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was on the same page with you.
Right, and the Supreme Court rules require 2 attorneys for each case, and they have to be desk certified.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go back and talk about the fees that haven't been paid? Did I understand that there's some attorney fees that go surely not back to 2005, right?
We have about I think we have about 15 cases. Did you say there's about 15 invoices from lawyers that go back to from the 05 to 08 years that we've received recently. We're not holding these necessarily, but we still receive old bills. Sometimes if let's say that we negotiated a reduction in the bills, but they don't think the reduction was fair, and so they keep sending us bills sometimes, or we may have just started receiving bills sometimes. Maybe it's a case that is just now getting finished under the old system. Yes, sir. So, but it's a small number compared. Like I said, we only have about 15 bills at this point that I'm aware of. So it is a relatively small number that we closed out the lion's share of all those things. We're not.
I'm sure it's a small number, but maybe to the attorney on the other end and what he's already had in, what he's done to prepare the case, and I'm sure he's incurred expenses in his office.
Yes, sir.
On those type things, and surely we can't expect him to. If they're not getting paid, how are they doing business with us? That's my whole point. I would think you got to.
Excuse me.
It's kind of tough.
I will say this: the previous policy was anything. I'm not sure that I think that that's the best policy, and so I've met with Director Stokes about that as well, and we talked about how that again. I don't. There's always an anecdotal story out there about GPDSC not paying their bills and not being somebody that you can work with. But I want to make sure that those things aren't true anymore. So actually we've talked about and changed that policy. So I do agree with you. Yes, sir.
Good. Thank you.
Chairman Bearden.
Just real quick, there's a House Bill 238 that's out there.
Yes, sir.
How would that help your agency? And just briefly explain how it would help the agency if it would.
From a management standpoint, the goal was to try to create more of a direct line management system. From as it stands now, I'm appointed by the governor. The council is appointed by the governor as well as the speaker and the lieutenant governor. It would clarify the roles of the council and the director about operations. And then most importantly, it would the public defenders around the state are appointed by local councils, and they can only be removed for cause after a number of hearings at the council level. So there's not a lot of accountability between the director and the local public defenders. And it becomes an issue, let's say, indigency verification. I get a number of questions about, well, are the people that we're handling, are they really indigent? Well, we do have a verification system and verification policies, but as far as compliance, if I go down to a local circuit and I say, well, show me how you're complying with these indigency requirements, if the public defender wants to volunteer that information to me, they can, but they don't have to. And if they're not following those guidelines, there's nothing I can do about that as it stands now. House Bill 238 would change that.
So basically, give you more control.
Yes, sir.
And the same thing with conflicts. This will help manage conflicts a little better.
Absolutely. Rather than having regional monolithic offices, maybe you go in, you meet with the public defender, and you see if we can do something with the way that their personnel are handling cases. Maybe there's a way we can save money within the circuit. Maybe there's a way that we can do cross-circuit, by staffing. Right now, they just tell me no. So that probably won't occur after House Bill 238. Not all of them do. I don't want this to sound like we're ganging up on the CPDs. These people are doing great work with very little resources for the most part around the state. The bill is really just for the exceptional circumstance where folks are not cooperating.
Chairman Burns?
You have to hire outside counsel sometimes, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's what we were just referring to on the past bills. How do you monitor, or how do you set up, what kind of accounting do you have to monitor the cost and really stay up to pace on the cost, and that it's not getting too exorbitant and from that standpoint?
Well, originally it was an hourly. They were paid hourly, and there was some compliance, but that became a problem. I don't know if you saw the news about Gwinnett County about that there was a contractor in Gwinnett County that was billing $100,000 more than any other contractor, and it took them 5 years to figure that out on their hourly, the way that it was being handled hourly with compliance. The way that we changed that is that we have flat fee contracts now. On the front end, the contracts build in 100 cases for $400 a case, with a certain amount of money for travel and costs, and you essentially appeal to the director for anything outside that, $400 per case, as well as the trial fee that we had discussed. That maybe is $1,000 for a murder case. Murder cases used to cost us $4,400 a case on the average. Now you're talking about a murder trial being $1,400. So it's a dramatic reduction that we're talking about.
So you require them to justify their cost.
If they're going to go outside the contract, absolutely, yes, sir.
And they do that up front, not after the fact?
No, and that's what we talk about with the special project. That if they end up with that cost after the fact, then right now they're appealing to the director, but maybe we can set up something that's a little right now they're appealing it to the director if they have additional costs.
Okay. All right.
Representative Baker.
Do you have an average of cases that go outside the $400? Do you see that often, a lot, or a little, or is that hard to say?
Well, it is hard to say, but it just depends. Right now, we don't have a fee structure that, and it may become a problem for us, hopefully not in litigation down the road, because that's money just wasted having to pay money in that circumstance. But we've discussed whether or not we create a fee structure. If it's, right now it's just a flat fee. Maybe there's some things built in for murder cases or things like that contemplates that in some contracts. But for the most part, we're talking about a flat fee contract. In the future, maybe we will have, maybe certain cases cost this, certain kinds of cases that are very serious cases that require a lot of time cost this, and I think that would be a better system.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. Currently, when a defendant is or applies for a public defender, he has to pay an application fee.
Yes, sir.
How much is that?
It's a $50 application fee.
All right, and the $50 application fee has been in effect since this system started, is that correct?
I believe so, yes,
and
sir.
How long is that?
Well, since 2003.
Okay, so for the last 8 years it has remained fairly static at $50.
Yes, sir.
And that $50 application fee goes into the fund that helps fund this.
That's right. The fund is 3 or 4 different fees, but that is one of the fees, yes, sir.
Okay, and how much does the $50 application fee raise?
And I don't have that in front of me. It's It averages around $490,000 to $500,000 a year.
Okay.
The lion's share of the Indigent Defense Fund, which, as I said before, is a number of fees, comes from the civil filing fee, where civil attorneys they file a $15 of their filing goes to Indigent Defense.
For all civil filings?
Yes, sir.
Just in Superior Court or Superior Court and State Court?
Probate, all kinds of courts. Yes,
All
sir.
right. What about the? You said there were about 4 fees. What are the other 2?
There's a fee that's applied on the back end if you are sentenced, and that also brings in a relatively. I have so many pieces of paper here. It brings in a smaller amount of money as well, and I can get you those exact figures because the governor had asked me for those figures recently as well, so I can break it all down for you if you would like.
Please do. All right. The next question I have is the Mental Health Division.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that briefly.
Yes, sir. There's a statute that creates the mental health director's position. And there's a requirement that they monitor people who are either been found not guilty by reason of insanity or they're incompetent to stand trial. As you know, those folks they are hospitalized usually, and they have yearly reviews, or they may have other needs, and they are, the goal is to make them competent, obviously, to either stand trial or, if they've been found not guilty, obviously that's a goal to take them off the strain of the system. And that's that's what the director does. They monitor that, and then there are some other lawyers that maybe not as much in the metro Atlanta area, but certainly throughout the state, they go represent those people in court at their yearly review hearings or any other court proceedings that may come up.
All right. Is there a staff that's attached to this mental health director?
Yes, sir. I believe there are 2 lawyers and a paralegal in addition to the director.
And is there any particular reason that could not, because the only thing the statute requires is that there be a director who monitors these things.
That's correct, yes, sir.
Is there any reason that the lawyer part of it could not be delegated or relegated back to the circuit level?
We are, again, yet another audit that we're conducting internally, but from a legal standpoint, I'm not aware of anything that says that.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Are there any other questions from the committee? If there are none, then we will close this hearing, and thank you very much.
Thank you.